The pandemic has completely altered the way workplaces function and how employees work. A recent study by Dimensional Research shows that 99% of companies are planning sweeping changes to the workplace as a result of COVID-19. 89% employees have cited frustrations with in-office experiences. So all this and more is making the future of workplace more complex. So I'm here with Naveen Narayanan, the CHRO of Biocon today, to talk about some of these challenges and how, as HR leaders, one would look at from a future of workplace standpoint. Really nice to meet you, Naveen. Thanks for your
time. Thank you very much. Thank you for this.
So, Naveen, you're aware with the kind of changes which are happening at workplaces. There is a huge mindset shift, and the culture of the organization also needs to change to meet this new normal. So how will organizations of the future enhance these workplace culture so that they're more future ready?
So first thing, thank you for this opportunity. See, my view is that the biggest change that happened probably last year is that purpose probably became bigger than profit for people, right? And so companies which were only focused on profit are probably now seeing a little bit of pain, right, where employees are not necessarily sticky, and as markets open, there's a bit of a backlash almost on some of those companies or industries that are there. Two is that I've not been a big fan of having a conversation just on workplace, which makes it binary, and I know there's a lot of dialogue on is it just work from home or is it office and so on. And of course, there's a third dimension to say you could also be working from co-working spaces or wherever. Geography becomes fluid and things like that. But I think what also changed was in the whole value proposition that suddenly it's not just about an employee, but it's also about family considerations and various other things. A simple example is every company wants to do vaccination, but today you can't think to say I have 5,000 employees, but I have their families to do. Or it is becoming a bit of a certain standard norm on how you would consider some of this thing. My also view is that, and most research points to this to say, we'll finally settle somewhere where 1 out of 4 will work from a non-office. Right, and whether that's not an optional one, but it just become a norm. I think we've fast-tracked some of that, or employment formats also we seem to have fast-tracked, which is right. Earlier, a lot of policies, you'll find some of the subtle nuances in companies. Policies are very focused on permanent employees, right? And it doesn't consider many such. There are probably another half a dozen such formats. A simple example is a recognition budget may not be given to a freelancer, right? And it's not budget. So why shouldn't they be included in it, right? Or work is out with the vendor or things like that. So I think the rethinking of who's an employee or who gives it as a service and should he be considered an employee, he or she, is a big question that I guess a lot of, at least my fraternity, will think through, I guess.
True. And I think with gig economy picking pace, I think a lot of those things, like you rightly mentioned, for having budgets for rewards and defining who employee actually is, I think that's going to be a huge challenge. The second factor with all these changes which have happened with remote working or working from anywhere is how employee performance will be gauged or rewarded, right? So what, according to you, will be the biggest factors impacting employee performance in the future?
So I mean, since you're talking to me as someone who doesn't do remote working or my industry doesn't do, we also need to understand that more than 2/3 of industries globally or locally, wherever, whichever you consider, are not remote working, right? The big chunks being manufacturing, logistics, services, right? Anything which requires high touch, hospitality, food, So there are many that are not going through this, right? So I think we've overshadowed it a lot with the tech sector, which affords you the so-called remote working in
Correct.
that sense, right? My industry, for example, nobody worked remote. I mean, in the peak of whatever it is, everybody turned up in factory, because if these guys didn't turn up in a factory, somebody else didn't get their medicine, right? So as simple as that. Um, and that's for deliveries or wherever it is. But I think you come to an interesting point before I answer the performance piece. There is the thing that I guess we absolutely don't know is, in the last 12 months, everybody has been through some pain. Whether it is deeply personal, whether it is just something emotional, there is a stain that everybody carries. How that stain is going to come through at work and how people kind of progress from here collectively, it's just a complete unknown that is there. And it seems to have an effect on engagement and performance and various aspects to it, right? I mean, there are enough studies to say, oh, productivity didn't drop and so on, but there is a price everybody has paid for it.
Correct.
Right? I mean, I want to save my job, so I work hard. I know there's a lot of pain, but still I do. But when the economy opens, you don't know how some of these will work through. My sense is that the future of performance is in predictive performance that's there, right? So the last 1 or 2 years, technologies have moved into this. They have picked the best of some of the consumer technologies that are there. So if an Amazon and somebody else can predict what I can buy and what I should be nudged to buy, right? And I most times on YouTube or Amazon, they say that 70% of the time what we buy or what we choose on YouTube is actually what they want you to do. I'm sure the same can be applied in employee technologies as well, which is to say, saying, how do you nudge people, predict to say, I'm going to be landing up like this in the end of the quarter. Give me a nudge, which is based on positive psychology, which is based on behavioral economics. And it says saying, Naveen, it's 5th October or 10th October. At current trajectory, you're not going to meet end December goals. Try and do these 1 or 2 things, right? Which becomes an actionable insight. So the future of performance is, one is it's continuous. It is not about managing the process that is there. It is going to be literally like a Facebook and LinkedIn kind of notifications that come in to say, do this, do this, do this, on a daily basis. That's there. And of course, it's predictable, predictive in some form. And of course, for many years, there's also been enough on gamification and so on. So it becomes transparent as gamification. It just suits the current generation a lot more. Those are places where I think the technology will lead us. We live that in the consumer world. There's no reason why we can't live that in an enterprise world in some ways. Of course, taking to other factors as well.
That's a very interesting angle. As a follow-up to that, so far, any of these performance appraisals or discussions have all happened where, the objectives are defined and it is top-down.
Yeah,
it's given and then you are measured against that. But now with probably the composition of the teams also changing, right? With Gen Z, all of them coming into the picture as well. I think that collaborative defining of goals would be required, right? So what are some thoughts on that front? Because that's like a huge shift for the leaders, because they've come from a system where it was defined top down, and now suddenly they need to collaborate.
Yeah. So I think we'll have the same issue, which is like the classic top-down strategy, native kind of companies, and then there'll be some which are circular or bottoms up as well. I think my personal view is that there has to be a process which is bottoms up build and there is top down build. Actually, the largest fundamental disconnect that I have in many performance management systems is, for 364 days, we tell people saying work together, collaborate. Now our teams are what makes us successful, etc. A lot of stuff that is said. The final day when we evaluate somebody, probably a majority of the companies evaluate you as an individual, pit you one against the other to say you were better than this, and pay you as an individual, right? And the consequence of your career is all individualistic, right? Um, very few companies have, even if they've done whatever formats, OKRs or whatever it is, very few companies genuinely have said, collectively we'll work, collectively we'll get rewarded, collectively we'll grow, right? And I think some of the consequence of performance that comes out of it, of how it is measured and how everybody collectively moves it, is very critical, right? And I don't know whether all organizations have moved it. I know many have abandoned the classic bell curves, and but they found other innovative ways to soften this, and it's still largely individualistic, right? And which is what kind of beats the whole piece that is there, because it doesn't seem to make much sense in the other 360 days. The I think a lot of the new technologies again have this very easily, which is know how do you share goals, how do you ensure that the dependencies are mapped. Now squads and tribes are very big. Now people do work in short bursts of teams everywhere, in every industry. They are always doing something, especially under current dynamic circumstances that are there. So accommodating for all of these, accommodating for fluid feedback to constantly come, constantly keeping this up-down kind of a top-down, bottom-up approach is probably what will make organizations successful in the future, or at least differentiated in that sense.
True. On from this performance management or even team engagement or team monitoring standpoint, interestingly, there is also data which was showing up that especially places which had a bit of remote working happening as well, that there was a lot of micromanaging which came in because people didn't trust that when you're at home you will perform up to the mark. So that is one challenge as a manager also, right? So how can I develop that trust on my team members on one front? Second was the aspect that you brought in, where everybody has gone through a personal, loss, or somewhere in the family or extended family and things like that, and they're also trying to grapple with what's happening, and then the workplaces are also changing. So how do you think managers or leaders and HR as enablers for that can better equip them to manage employees teams better in the future?
See, in my view, I think the biggest influence that overall technologies have come in is wherever we have today some penetration is in the mid-level, largely that's there, right? So for example, if I'm an employee, right, at the bottom rung, earlier if I had to get instructions from my boss on what to do, how to do, where do I stand, what incentive will I get, where do I stack up with others, what training could I go through, everything today is an algorithm.
Correct.
It is available for the last 1 or 2 years, starting I think 2019, when Gartner predicted to say that augmented analytics will become one of the biggest future technologies that are there. Today, companies which have invested in crunching a lot of this data, I could be a sales guy on the road. I get to know to saying, where do I stand in this week, right? In the middle of the week. I know how can I improve my performance. I know a lot of this. This puts a lot of pressure on the mid manager whose biggest job was, I will tell you what to do because I have grown through those ranks.
Yes.
Number two that is there is that a lot of their so-called review mechanisms, teaching and other things was, I will watch you, right? And physically watch you or keep a tab on you and things like that, which is gone, right? I mean, there is no, in this framework of what was work, a worker and a workplace, the workplace concept is dissolved to a large extent in many places, or that is where it's become fluid, right? And so we are not congregating and stuff like that. Even in a positive way, if you look at it, I mean, we all know, I think there's enough research and psychology to saying that when people meet, happiness quotient improves, right? But today that has become hard. So a manager's ability earlier to bring people together, let's have some fun, let's go Friday evening, dinner, drinks, No, I am today unable to do something like that as a manager. So there are a lot of restrictions. So there's on one side algorithms, which is making my part of my job redundant. I don't have other equipments. Um, this is where I guess, I mean, hopefully the mid managers, the people managers build certain capabilities, which is on trying to be coaches, trying to be folks who are curating learning and providing it to people, trying to ensure that constantly on a daily, regular basis, goals, achievements are aligned and people are getting those inputs beyond algorithms that are there. We will see emergence of probably a set of people who are better coaches or just a better form of reviewers, and or people who pick good sense of what is happening on the business front, make better decisions, or enable you to make better decisions. Right?
Okay.
The old format of managers who watched you in an office, I think maybe a bit redundant going forward.
Yeah. So I think that coaching mindset will be a key aspect for them to develop.
Which I think aligns to the whole performance concept to say if every day an algorithm gives you a nudge, it is to coach you and tell you saying, I want you to be successful.
Correct.
This is not I'm watching you and in March I will tell you, I will judge you whether you are this thing, right? That's a better word that's there. So it's a different philosophy that is there, which means your managers have to align to that philosophy.
True. So my last question, Naveen, would be, if what's the advice that you want to give to HR leaders out there who are gearing up to meet these challenges of a new workplace and a new employee engagement system or a new breed of employees itself?
Yeah, I personally believe that. The way the trends are moving is that in general, at the highest level of human capital, an HR manager tomorrow is, or even today for that matter, is making judgments between man and machine, right? So again, this definition of the so-called manpower planning changes to it's a human plus plus. Constantly there is there. Most research shows that, and again, if you look at the economic cycles of 99, 2001, 2009, and all the crises that we've had, wages never come back to that. Automation picks rapidly during those periods that are there, right? So businesses use these opportunities to rapidly scale into digital, robotics, machines, and so on. So an HR manager's futuristic view to say this work can be done by machine and does not need to be done by human is a big aspect of human capital strategy, right? Two, that is there, I think a big aspect is we will struggle for talent, right? So companies which are going to be fabulous in future talent spotting and building that, and no, rather the build versus the buy format that is there. Whoever has done that well, I think will succeed a lot more, and who keep doing, have their own farms of talent that's there. The third, like which I spoke earlier, was around the whole equity and equitability that's there, and how purpose is seen bigger than profit. Now, companies, I think in the last 12 months, which had a lot more transparency and care and genuine affection towards employees or empathy, are what will come out stronger now.
Correct.
Right? And I think you are seeing that in various industries where people are just bleeding now as the economy opens, right? I mean, there's almost a revenge of attrition that is there to say, saying, I will leave you because you didn't support me in that sense. So this whole equity and environment and organizational health and how we cared on a long-term basis, this is going to keep coming back. Now, this is not let me wait for the next pandemic or crisis to then I'll show you care. Doesn't work. No, largely it doesn't work in that sense. So a bit of a different set of priorities that are there. I mean, as machines come naturally, I mean, algorithms are available to replace a lot of layers and jobs and tasks, and there is pressure that is there, and technology is available. I mean, your company is a great example of trying to make a dent on this particular space, right? So it is important that the HR person thinks around some of these and tries to nudge the organization forward and manage change around some of this.
Correct. So I think it will be very interesting to see whether the entire profession will be called human resources or it will just be resources itself, because you'll be managing humans as well as bots.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be very interesting to see how the future shapes up.
Gartner calls this, or I had also written a paper on this to say, saying is we called it a human plus plus, which is
Human plus plus.
so the machine for the next 10 years, in my view, at least the machines will augment human intelligence. I don't think we're yet there where, I mean, they replace tasks, but they don't replace intelligence.
Correct.
Which is where I guess HR folks kind of have to help build that kind of intelligence, the creativity, the innovation, the passion, the pride, and various things like that.
Correct. So it was very interesting, discussing all these various facets that we're going to see from a human resources standpoint and also as a future workplace perspective. So thanks once again, Naveen, for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Karthik. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.